Hi, Kat Chancellor again, Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator, and I was having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to try this again. I'm coming to you live from Pensacola, and I'm using the wonderful tropical, timeless tropical stamp set from the Tropical Oasis bundle that is featured, and it's actually a suite. Tropical Oasis suite that is featured in the catalog, the mini catalog. You can see all the different examples that they provided, and I particularly was drawn to several of them. One is this one here. Though I didn't have the background paper, I went ahead and stamped my own background paper using Pear Pizzazz and Old Olive, just doing some stamp and stamp off. And I used the wonderful embossing folder, which is called the Coastal Weave embossing folder, which gives a really nice texture, and this really pretty woven burlap ribbon here. I also am really finding the framelets that come from the Stitch So Sweetly set really, I'm just finding so many uses for them, and I feature them here on this card, as well as this card here, which just shows some of the flowers, again using that Coastal Weave embossing folder for my background. I just went ahead and stamped and colored these beautiful little, I think these are called mangiopangee flowers, and this gorgeous hibiscus flower. Again, it's just a very easy set to pull together and create some very fast and easy cards. Now, I experimented a little, and that's what I want to show you today. I want to show you this one as well, and this is simply using the wonderful die for the pineapple. And that's really easy to put together, and I'll have all the information on my blog. But I was kind of experimenting with this particular stamp set, and instead of just doing the stamping and the layering, what I wanted to do was try a couple of coloring techniques, and this die set, it's kind of a deep set technique where you can use your dies and kind of set your image back into your card, and then your card is then framed by your die cut. And this card here, where I've used this new this stamping technique that I'm going to demonstrate here, which really kind of makes this palm tree pop and makes it really look very, very realistic. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead and get started. You're going to need your Timeless Tropical set, and I'm using a piece of Very Vanilla, and I think my pieces are going to be using Calypso Coral as my base card. I'm using a piece of Crumb Cake as my layering card, and that's going to be at 5 1/4 by 4. And then I'm using a piece of Very Vanilla that's at 5 3 3/4. This is the piece I'm going to stamp with. I'm going to pull in my my Stamparatus. I've pulled off these stamps right here, and I'm going to go ahead and put I'm going to center my piece of cardstock, but I'm using these Stampin Write Markers. I'm using Early Espresso, Call Me Clover, Crumb Cake. I'm using a Stamping Blend Party, Light Pool Party, and I'm using Garden Green. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and just line up our card with where we want our image to be, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put my magnets down like this, and I'm going to take the back of my I'm going to take the back of my stamp, and let me just make sure that I get this in view for you to see. And I'm going to use the crumb cake first, and I'm using the wide side, kind of like the brush tip, and I'm just going to brush the stalk of the tree, and I'm just going to stamp that first. And you can kind of see how it kind of gives this very faint. Let me kind of come in a little bit, because this is where it gets kind of cool. So you can kind of see that it gives this really nice little faint image. Well, then I'm going to take my early espresso, and I'm taking the brush end, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pat it along these stalks, just like that. I'm just going to pat it. And then I'm going to stamp. Now look at that really pretty effect, and let me kind of move in here so you can see the effect that stamping does. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? It gives a really, and this is the way the tree stalks would look. Isn't that beautiful? It just gives a really realistic view or outcome. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let me come back out a little bit, because now what we're going to do is we're going to do our foliage. So I've got two greens here, and I'm going to take the brighter of the greens. I'm going to take Call Me Clover, and I'm going to take the brush end, and I'm just going to kind of brush my stamp like this. Okay, then I'm going to take my other color, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pat this, but I'm going to kind of make sure I get the areas I didn't get. I'm just going to pat it, and I might kind of fill in some of these areas of my palm tree like that. And then I'm just going to kind of tap it. And then we're going to stamp. Now look how pretty that is. You see kind of there's a lot of change. I mean, you can see kind of the changes in color. So this was the lighter one. This is the darker one. So I can continue to add color to this and add a little bit more depth. As I continue to kind of stamp and see where I may be missing. See, I'm missing some of the foliage there, and just make sure I kind of get all the edges of my tree and kind of fill it in. And that really gives a nice effect to your palm tree. It looks very, very realistic. So now I'm going to clean this off, because now I want to stamp my sentiment, and I am going to put a piece of scratch paper over my image that I just stamped, because now I want to stamp my sentiment, and I don't want to mess up my freshly stamped palm tree. And we will just stamp that right there. There you go. So I have the palm tree. Now let's go ahead and stamp another one, because I'm going to do that inset technique. So I'm going to put this one aside. I'm going to get another piece of cardstock, same size, and we're going to center it. I want to make sure I have it centered. Okay, and again, I'm going to put my magnets down. We're going to do the exact same technique. So I'm going to start with the crumb cake, using the crumb cake on the stalk of my palm tree, right? And then I'm going to just go ahead and take my espresso, and I'm just going to hit it like that, and then stamp. And there it is. You can kind of see where I've created that look. You know, I can put more if I want a little bit more definition. I can just add more, and it'll kind of fill in that area. Now we're going to do the same. I've got 2 shades of green. They look pretty close. So I'm going to take the brighter of the green, and this is the one that I'm going to just kind of go over my stamp, kind of like this. Okay, and I'm kind of hitting my stamp, just kind of haphazardly covering it. Then I'm going to take my other color, and I'm just going to strike this with this brush end of my stamping marker, and just kind of hit it across my stamp, and then to kind of pick up that other color, and you can see how it kind of picks up that variegation. Now, if I want to make sure that I've caught the outline of all my palm fronds, I can just go ahead and kind of, you know, pick those out. If I want to put a little bit more color in the center of my palm fronds, I can go ahead and add ink here in the center. And all that's going to do is it's just going to give it much more depth. You can see kind of how it's kind of building up with the depth there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my and I'm going to use a piece of crumb cake, and it is about the same size, right? So I'm going to put this piece of crumb cake and I'm going to line this up right here, because what I want is I want this stamp right here to line up with that piece of crumb cake, okay? So I'm just gonna and that's pretty much where I would expect. You see how I have my my very vanilla is lined up on equally as how I'd want to put it on my card with this piece of crumb cake. Okay, so now that I know that's where I want it, I'm going to yep, that's it. I'm going to I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to lock down my crumb cake. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stamp very lightly I have I'm going to have an image right there. And you can see, let me just go ahead and, I just want to stamp the image because now I'm going to die cut that. Okay, I'm going to put my die right over that so we can create our, all right, so that's really all I need. Let me pull my die. So this is going to go right there. So let's go ahead and cut that out. Let me just clean my stamp here. Just lay that out here. And I don't see anyone is on watching this afternoon, but that's fine because this video will be available for anyone who wants to watch it. And I'll also link it to my blog so that I'll put all the pieces and products and some of the tips and dimensions for your reference. Okay, so now I've cut this piece out, and this piece is going to lie very nicely right there. You see that? And that is where I'm going to build up my card for my die inset. Now, what I want to do though is I want to go ahead and cut this middle part and probably cut some of this here so I have a much smoother, see that I have a much smoother silhouette than what the die provides. And I'm going to now take my embossing folder and I'm going to emboss. I'm going to emboss this piece with my embossing folder. Okay, so now we have this really lovely embossed piece that is now going to frame our card like that. Isn't that pretty? And we're going to pop this up so it's going to be die set. And then we have this piece that we just stamped as well, and this is going to go on top of a piece of crumb cake, and both of these are going to go on a piece of Calypso coral, and we're going to have our card like so. So now let's finish off our image. This one I'm going to take some of this crumb cake and I'm just going to create my own little ground, and I'm going to do the same right here. I'm just going to create a little bit of ground. Then I'm going to take my my light pool party, and all I want to do is I just kind of want to go out like this from my tree. And I'm going to do the same thing right there. I'm going to kind of just brush it out like that. And then I'm going to just fill in the inside right here. And just kind of brush around to kind of create that outline. Okay, so that one's done. And I just kind of want to make sure I have a little bit of a grounding there. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just going to kind of because this is going to lie nicely on top of it right here. So I do want to get some of these little areas. See, that's going to look very nice just like that. Okay. So this piece is going to go here, and this piece I'm going to do another step because I'm going to create a border using my board here, just very nicely around the edge. Let me just make sure you can see what I'm trying to do. Okay, and we're going to take this, and I'm just going to put a very light, kind of a nice border. I love doing this. I think it makes a big difference when you just have a piece of plain cardstock. This is simple stamping at its, I think, at its simplest, which is also the most elegant. Isn't that pretty? There you go. So that piece is done. And then I'm going to take this piece of cardstock, and I'm going to use my kind of like this edger, and I'm going to kind of really fray up the edge of this piece of cardstock so it looks very beach shabby, if you will. And if anybody's watching and they want to say hi, that would be nice. I hope everyone can hear me. Let me see. Also the most elegant, isn't it? And there we go. Oof. Got all these little fuzzies all over the place. Okay, isn't that nice? It's nice and shabby, kind of a beach shabby. So this is going to go very nicely on that. Isn't that pretty? So I am going to use tear tape. I don't want to use a lot of glue because if I use glue, that sometimes can pucker the back of my cardstock, and I don't want to do that. I'll use tear tape because it'll give me a nice clean finish. And it won't pucker because the glue is wet, and it can pucker the back. So let me just go ahead and pull this off. And let me place that right here in the middle. There we go. And I just love that look. And then I'm going to take my Calypso coral, and let's just go ahead and make sure that this is scored right here. And that is going to go very nicely right there. Isn't that pretty? So let's go ahead and put that on. And I'm just going to use some tear tape and put that on. Again, this is very simple stamping. Paper, stamps, and ink. That's all it is. And there we go. Now this card is done. Now the last step will be to take a piece of very vanilla, and I would run it through my embossing folder, and I would just basically run it through here like this. I'm just running it through the embossing folder, running through the Big Shot, and then look at this really pretty effect that I get with that. Do you see isn't that pretty? So now this will go on the inside of my card. And here I just like to use some snail and go ahead and put that right there. Voila! Okay, so that card is done using our technique, our coloring technique. Now, let's go and finish this card. Now, I need to step over here and grab a piece of cardstock for our base card. I'm going to cut that right now, because that should be here, and I'm going to go ahead and let me get my cutting blade out of the way, and I'm just going to score right there. So here is my base card, and I should have, yep, here's my bone folder. Let's just go ahead and get this bone folder. And now I'm going to place this right here, but I want to ensure that it's lined up so that it's centered right like that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take this piece and I would like to put, stay with me for a moment, I would like to put a large piece of very vanilla and have this kind of pop out. And I didn't plan for that, but I can cut. Do I want to cut that down? Yeah, I can cut this down on this side. So let's cut this down. So this piece would have to be 5 3/4. So I'm going to do 3/4 right there. Yep, 5 3/4. I'm going to do 3/4 right there. And then I'm going to do the 5. It's going to go right there. Okay. And so I've kind of trimmed this down. It's going to fit this right here. And I may have to trim this other part a little bit as well. So I'm going to have to trim these edges right here. And it's just going to be ever so slightly, just a little bit, because I want to create, that should have been in my original planning, but I didn't include that, and since I'm working live, we're just going to kind of work through it. So there you see how that is going to be centered there. All right, and then this is going to go centered there on our base card. All right, now to finish this off though, I'm going to again grab this this little tool, and you can use the side of your scissors if you wanted to. And I'm going to fray the edge because, again, I want this to look kind of beachy, you know, beachy chic. And if you've ever, and if you've been around beach or tropical, they usually have like this kind of matting that is usually woven with a straw. In some cases it could be bamboo, and it always frays. It frays in the salt air. So we kind of want that kind of nice little fraying. And there you go. So then you can see how nice that is going to look right there, like that. So now let's think about how we want to put our sentiment. So our sentiment is what we used right here, which is our friendship. So I can put the sentiment there. So let me grab another piece of my Very Vanilla, and I'm just going to pull this stamp off and put it on a block. And I'm going to stamp it. I think I'm going to use soft suede. So let's see how we're going to. And I'm just going to put that. I'm actually going to put that right there. Okay. So it is still pretty dark, but it's not as dark as Early Espresso or black. Now I'm going to grab my little mini trimmer, and we're going to trim this down because I just want to build a pennant, right? We just want to build a pennant that's going to go on our card. So it's going to go down here, and we're just going to go ahead and clip this from corner to the center, and there it is. And I can trim some more. I'm just going to trim that right there. All right. So now you can kind of see how this will go right there, and we can add, what we want to add to kind of make that pop out is we're going to take some of this burlap twine, and I'm going to cut, and I want you to see, I'm not going to cut the exact length. The reason why is because I'm going to take this burlap twine, and if you can see what I'm doing is I'm opening it up, and I want that kind of that beachy feel. And I guess what I really like about this card and what I like about this image is that when we lived on Guam and I took my son, my husband and I were stationed there, I mean, it was just so idyllic. It was just such a beautiful island, and in the backyard we had these palm trees, and they would drop their coconuts, and my son would go out and he would collect the coconuts, and he would bring them in the house, and I'd have to, no, we don't, that's not what we do. And then he would basically build, like, maybe he'd build like a circle around the palm tree. So I finally got him to like build a circle around the palm tree and stack the coconuts. And then in school, he learned that how they took the coconut, and they husked the coconut to get that brown piece that's on the inside, which then they split open and you get the coconut meat and the coconut milk. So you have this big green husked coconut, and then the Chamoras would go ahead and break it open and show them, the center of the coconut is what is prized. What was interesting was that after he learned that, he understood what was inside all those green coconuts that would fall from the tree, and he would build his little, you know, he would stack them around the outside of the palm, you know, around the base of the palm. But then when we got to San Diego, he was just absolutely floored when he saw, as we walked in through a Vons or an Alpha Beta, your regular store, that they had the coconuts there in produce, and they were, you know, you could buy them. And he stood in the middle of produce, grabbed the coconuts, and stood there and went, "Mom, look at this! Aren't they silly? You look what they're selling here." Because, you know, it was not something that you bought on Guam, because you could basically just harvest them from your palm trees. So he just thought it just made absolutely no sense to him why anyone would want to go to the store and buy a coconut. So that's my coconut story, and it just makes me kind of think about that as I put this card together. Okay, do you see how I kind of opened that up? And then I'm going to, and I could probably, I think I might trim this a little bit more. And that's what I love about this little trimmer, is that I can line this up very nicely, and I can just trim this down very, very easily. Let me just kind of line that up. I've got a nice little, see, and I mean, it really cuts well. So there, I've kind of, you know, kind of trimmed that a little bit more. So now let's put this, I've got all my pieces and parts. So now here's the big piece. The big piece is we're going to have to take this, and we're going to pop this up on dimensionals so that it kind of sits as a window right there. So I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to grab dimensionals, and I'm going to very carefully just kind of put them around my kind of the opening here, and I'm kind of putting like my point of my dimensional is kind of like fitting very nicely right there. And I want to make sure I kind of get that there. I just want to make sure that this, you know, stands up to the test of time. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pull my corners out just yet, because I want to see how this is going to match up. See, that's going to match up just like that. Perfect. And I kind of want this a little bit more shabby. And I don't care if the corners kind of fray and curl. In fact, I kind of want them to fray and curl a little bit. Okay, so that's going to go right there. So let's go ahead and pull off these dimensionals around our opening. I'm hoping you're enjoying this. I think I have 4 people watching. If you want to, thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. If you want to say hi, that would be nice. Let me know where you're watching from. Okay, so I'm just going to pardon my head as I kind of, well, let me move this back, but pardon my head, and there it is. I'm kind of looking down and I'm lining it up, and boom. Now, isn't that pretty? Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, I love that. See that? All right, so now I can peel these, because yes, it looks like those hit the corner the way I wanted them to. And then that hit the corner the way I wanted them to. Okay. So now this is going to go right there like that, okay, in the center of that. And again, I don't want to use glue, because I don't want the the glue is wet and I don't want to ruin my ink job, my inking. Right there. Okay, and then I'll just pull these up with the... I'm doing more live videos primarily because I have the time. I find it very therapeutic to kind of talk to... I'm hoping I see I have 5 people watching me right now. So I am imagining I'm in my craft room talking to 5 of my craft ladies while we're putting together cards, and it kind of helps, you know, as you socially distance. I really don't want to just talk to a camera and then have to sit down and edit. So if you want to jump on and say hi, that would be cool. I'd appreciate that. Okay, do you see how pretty that is? Let me pull in so you can see kind of how that is kind of a die set card. So, you know, here's this image, and then we just kind of popped it down using our die. So it's another way to use our dies. All right, so this is going to go here, but first we're going to put this nice piece of yarn, jute burlap, and I think I'm going to put this like right there, because I want this burlap to kind of show. What do you think? You think that works? I think it works. All right. Or I could put it down here and I could put this up there. So I don't know which way to go. Does anybody have any ideas out there? Or if I centered it, see, then I just kind of lose the effect of the burlap altogether. So I think I kind of like having the burlap kind of go underneath. Let me turn it around and take a look at it. Or do I like it like that? No, I think I like it kind of at the bottom, because I think it kind of helps to frame the card. So we can do it that way. I think that's a good way to do it. All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the burlap, and I've kind of stretched it out a little bit. I just like to take a little bit of tape, and I'm just going to kind of go across this burlap with the tape like that. And it's just really kind of, well, actually what I could use, because I don't want to use glue, because the glue is going to, like, I can just use a piece of tear tape. Yeah, that's perfect. Well, let's just use a piece of tear tape, like right there, because the tear tape will be invisible once I pull off the backing. If I could get the backing of this pulled off. My son is going across country this week. He got orders and he's on his way to San Diego. I don't know if you've been following me, then you know that I'm a retired Navy. My husband's retired Navy. If you've read my bio, and I have a son that's actually in the service. So, you know, send prayers is for those on the road. Okay, that took a little while to do, but I finally got that pulled, because you'll certainly be on my mind. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put that right there. And that's just really frayed, but I'm not going to worry about that yet, because if you put it on the card, it actually doesn't look too bad. I can kind of trim it a little. There, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to bump this up on a dimensional right there, just like that. And I'm just going to put the dimensionals right along the top. And I think I should pull my mini dimensionals out, and because they're going to go right here along the top, so that's very easy. I'm just going to put them in the two corners and the middle, and that should work very nicely there. Now, isn't that pretty? Look at that. I just think that is so nice. Now we'll turn it around. Now I will get my glue, and I will make sure that I get that nicely glued up, and there we go. Isn't that pretty? Now let's think for a minute, because we have these neat little things. We could put a little hyacinth. Is it a hyacinth right there? And I would use a glue dot. And we would put that right there. That, I think, is really pretty. So here are our cards that we made, kind of using a die setback technique. And here I used just very vanilla, and I kind of burnished it with some ink. I just used crumb cake with the texture, and I think that looks really nice. And then, because I think the image looked so pretty, I went ahead and just made, a plain card, because I just think it stands really very nicely on its own. So I hope that you like my video, and I will be back with another technique in a couple of days, but thanks for watching. And if you need a demonstrator or catalog, please contact me. I'm Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection at stampartconnection.com. Happy stamping!